We are going to videotape one of our residents, Al Johnson. We've discovered that we knew all along we had amazing resources right here in our community. And we'd like to share with Ferris Hills, and they're going to share with us. So this is our first attempt to videotape one of our presentations. So thank you for coming. And now I'm going to turn it over to Al Johnson with his presentation on the Panama Canal.
Good morning. How many have been on the Panama Canal? Oh, only one. Very good. All right, let's start. First, we have to know, where is Panama? It is a country that connects North America to South America. If you're on one side of the canal, you're in North America. If you jump over to the other side of the canal, you're in South America. The Panama Canal is an artificial 51-mile waterway in Panama that connects the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean to provide a maritime trade route. The canal cuts across the Isthmus of Panama and is a conduit for one of the largest and most difficult engineering projects ever undertaken. It greatly reduces the time for ships to travel between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, enabling them to avoid the lengthy and hazardous Cape Horn route around the southern tip of South America. It goes from the city of Cologne on the Atlantic to Panama City on the Pacific. Strangely, the Atlantic entrance is west of the Pacific entrance. And as you can see, the two cities up there, Cologne happens to be slightly west of Panama City. The route goes through the isthmus with locks at each to raise the ships up 85 feet to the Catoon Lake. I've got to try my other glasses. I can't read quite as clearly that way. The lake was formed to provide the copious quantities of water required to operate the locks. When it was formed, it was the largest man-made lake in the world. And perhaps if we look at a cross-section, over there is the Atlantic Ocean, up 3 or 4 locks to the Catoon Lake, all the way to the Pacific, and drop down again to the level of the Pacific Ocean. The first attempt to construct a canal through Panama began in January of 1881. The project was inspired by the French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps, who was able to raise considerable funds in France as a result of the huge profits generated by his successful construction of the Suez Canal. If you've done one canal, you can dig any canal. That was his thinking. Although the Panama Canal needed to be only 40% as long as the Suez Canal, it was much more of an engineering challenge due to the combination of tropical rainforests, debilitating climate, the need for canal locks, and the lack of any ancient route to follow. His men were totally unprepared for the rainy season, during which the Chagres River, where the canal started, became a raging torrent, rising up by 35 feet. The dense jungle was alive with venomous snakes, insects, and spiders. But the worst challenges were yellow fever, malaria, and other tropical diseases which kill thousands of workers. By 1884, the death rate was over 200 people per month. John Stevens was the American civil engineer and railroad executive who, as chief engineer of the Panama Canal from late 1905 to April of 1907, laid the basis for that project's successful completion. Stevens became an engineer through practical experience. In 1905, he was appointed chief engineer of the Isthmus Canal Commission and thus became responsible for both the engineering and construction of the Panama Canal. At the time of Stevens' appointment, the United States had made little progress over earlier French attempts. Cognizant of the technical reasons for the French failure, he upgraded and greatly expanded the network of railways for the French failure. He upgraded and greatly expanded the network of railways serving the project. His organizational and planning skills provided invaluable in getting the project moving. But at the same time, the future of the project was threatened by outbreaks of yellow fever and malaria. Stevens halted construction work until both diseases were brought under control. And in 1906, work did resume. He was instrumental in persuading President Theodore Roosevelt of the feasibility of a high-level canal using a combination of locks and a dammed lake. The sea-level canal favored by a majority of the Commission's members would have required moving additional massive amounts of earth and rock, would have cost more, and would have taken longer to complete. Roosevelt's resolution of this question in Stevens' favor permitted work to proceed toward a specific goal. When Stevens left the Panama Canal business, I believe he became involved in the Trans-Siberian Railway. We've all heard of Major Walter Reed, for which the hospital is named. He was the U.S. Army physician who in 1901 led the team that confirmed the theory of the Cuban Dr. Carlos Findlay that yellow fever is transmitted by particular mosquito species rather than by direct contact. This insight gave impetus to the new fields of epidemiology and biomedicine, and most immediately allowed the resumption and completion of the work on the Panama Canal. Reed followed work started by Findlay and directed by George Miller Sternberg, who had been called the first U.S. bacteriologist. Carlos Findlay was a Cuban epidemiologist who discovered that yellow fever is transmitted by a mosquito. A graduate of Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia, he returned to Cuba, and in 1879, Findlay was appointed by the Cuban government to work with the North American Commission studying the causes of yellow fever. In 1900, the U.S. Army Yellow Fever Board, which was headed by the physician Walter Reed, arrived in Cuba, and Findlay attempted to persuade Reed of his mosquito vector theory. Reed's proof that mosquitoes did indeed transmit yellow fever, and William Gorgas' eradication of the disease in Cuba and in Panama followed. The construction of a canal with locks required the excavation of more than 200 million cubic yards of material. As quickly as possible, the Americans replaced or upgraded the old, unusable French equipment with new construction equipment and was designed for a much larger and faster scale of work. 102 large railroad-mounted steam shovels were purchased, steam-powered cranes, giant hydraulic rock crushers, and other large-scale construction equipment, nearly all of which were manufactured by new, extensive machine-building technology developed and built in the United States. President Teddy Roosevelt, and you can see him right in the middle of the picture up here. You can see how small he is inside of one of these railroad-mounted steam shovels. He's seen here seated on one of the large shovels, was a vocal and powerful advocate for the new canal. The construction of the canal was completed in 1914, 401 years after Panama was first crossed by Vasco da Balboa. The United States spent almost $500 million, that's roughly equivalent to $12 billion in today's money, to finish the project. This was by far the largest American engineering project to date. The canal was formally opened on August 15, 1914, with the passage of the cargo ship SS Ancon, and caused a severe drop in traffic along the Chilean ports due to shifts in the maritime trade routes. If they stopped coming around the Horn, Chilean ports lost out. In the top of the picture, this series of locks were the original 110-foot widths. And that set of locks is a twin set. There's 2 locks in every place. The new locks, of which there is only 1 lane, and this was widened to 180 feet. The original locks at 110, a wider lane of locks was constructed between 7 and 2016. The expanded canal with lock width extended to 180 feet became commercial operation on June 26, 2016. Annual traffic has risen from about 1,000 ships in 1914, when the canal first opened, to 14,702 vessels in 2008. By 2012, more than 815,000 vessels had passed through the canal. It takes 11 hours to pass through the Panama Canal. The American Society of Civil Engineers has ranked the Panama Canal one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. On September 7, 1977, a treaty was signed by President Jimmy Carter and Omar Trujillo, the leader of Panama. This mobilized the process of granting the Panamanians free control of the canal as long as Panama signed a treaty guaranteeing the permanent neutrality of the canal. And it became effective on December 31st, 1999. Also note the 6 ponds beside the locks in the new canal. With the heavy traffic through the canal, saving water became important. These ponds help save almost 60% of a lock cycle. Sailing under the bridge carrying U.S. Route 1. Notice the amount of excavation needed to permit a canal to be built. This is a shot of the original set where there are 2 lanes. The original set of gates in the locks swing like you see up in the Erie Canal, like this. The new lane has a lock gate that goes right across and knifes through. Apparently, the maintenance of a lock is much easier. Here's a cargo ship, a container ship going through the locks. When we went through the locks, we were in a very small boat right behind a huge one like this, and you would get an appreciation how little you are and how big they are. I want to draw your attention to this vehicle here with the cables going up to the ship, and another one over there with its cables going up to the ship. These are called mules, and they are actually railroad cars, railroad engines. They're electric, and you can see their cable goes to the ship. And their purpose is to make sure the ship stays in the center of the lane. They are not pulling the ship through the canal lock. They are just to make sure that it doesn't rub the sides of the lock. This is a skyline of Panama City. When we flew in, I thought we were coming into Manhattan. It's very busy. In about 2012, Ferris Hills resident Dr. Bill Craver and I spent a 5-day trip on an elder hostel program on the Panama Canal. All of my own pictures have been lost someplace. I can't find them. So I had to use other sources to complete this program. If anyone is interested in learning more, I would recommend a book by David McCullough, The Path Between the Seas. And if you've ever read any of David McCullough, he is a very clear writer, and you get a very good understanding of his subject. But I read that book, and I was determined to go through the canal. The only person I could find that would go with me was Bill Craver, who was my golfing partner. A few weeks ago, I found a document that I had sent to my kids about my trip through the canal, and found some printed pictures in that document. So this picture of Bill Craver and the 5 pictures that follow are photographs of those pictures. So the pictures aren't very good, but if you knew Bill Craver, you would recognize him. You played golf with him frequently. And there's another picture of the skyline. It is a bustling financial center of Panama. The cost to go through the canal is big money. And if you're on a cruise ship with a couple of thousand passengers, a good chunk of your fare pays for that trip. One of the elder hostel programs that we experienced was a river cruise where we heard and saw some howler monkeys. This guy looked down on us with utter disdain. He was in total comfort, lounging on this branch and looking down on us and wondering what the devil we're doing down there. The jungles of Panama are used by the U.S. military as training grounds for their some of their soldiers. It's a tough environment, and they have to go through there and learn how to survive. On our run through the canal, we boarded this 110-foot cutter. Somebody said it was a rum runner ship of Al Capone. Makes for a good story anyway. Anyway, we were behind that big container ship, or a large container ship, and my gracious, I never thought I was in such a small boat. And every craft that goes through the Panama Canal has to have a pilot, a Panamanian pilot. And you do not move unless you're told to move. It's run like aircraft control tower and all, and ship number, move into position. It's a constant chess game. The canal runs 24/7, and it's busy all the time. When you're going to go through the canal, you ask for a slot, and you're told to be on time. And if you're not there, you lose it and go back to the back of the line again. This container ship was called ahead of us and passed us with very close clearance. Again, you realize you're in a little dinky rowboat compared to these big things. Our return from Cologne to Panama City, we boarded the train and had privilege to occupy the dome car. Our leader is the gentleman in the cap, this guy here. All of our leaders and lecturers were Panamanian, and they were excellent, every one of them. The city, at the time that we went through, the city of Cologne, it's a little backcountry city compared to Panama City, has no traffic lights. Panama City, of course, has traffic lights. And they have less fender benders in Panama City per capita. So it's all on being very cautious at intersections. And we were in a big motor coach, so of course we were bigger than everybody else, and so we got preferential. Anyway, folks, that's my story on the Panama Canal, and I'd be glad to take any questions. You can all wake up now.
Well, I have heard for years that on December 7th, the Japanese were supposed to have a ship in the canal and blow up the canal.
That's interesting. I've never heard that story.
But apparently, according to the story, the commander of this ship got mixed up over the international date line. And since there was no radio contact, like December 6th in those days, he was a day late.
Makes for a good story.
I don't know whether, I've always wondered if it was true.
I don't know. Never heard it. Has anybody else heard that story? Interesting. Why don't you write a book about that?
Well, apparently the captain of the ship, whoever made a mistake, immediately committed harry-carry. Is that what the word is?
As he dove off the side of the ship?
Same face. Suicide.
Okay.
Didn't we recently change the political arrangement with Panama?
Yes.
Yeah.
Back in those days, they were all run by the U.S. And on, I don't remember what slide it was, but yes, we turned it over. Jimmy Carter turned it over. And he was given kind of a bad time in this country over handing it back to the Panamanians. But apparently they've run it through very well. When Bill and I were there, they were just starting to dig the new lane. And it was supposed to be done in 2014. I said in there what year I thought we went through, and I don't remember, but it was in the future. But they didn't make it till 16. So it's totally Panamanian now. And neutral. Anything else? Margaret?
Is there a base there, an American military base near or on it?
Yeah,
Yes.
there is in Panama. I don't know. The transition was just going on, slowly being assimilated and taken over.
Because I would imagine it's still useful to have a base there for the protection of the U.S.
Yes. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you, Al. Can we give him a